PHA podcast. Today, our guest is Michael Guevara. He is a fourth year PhD student at UCLA in mechanical engineering. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Adrian. Thank you for having me.
So, I
And by the
wanted,
way, also thank you for getting my last name right. You're like one of the few who could get it right, Guevara.
um, so to start with, I just wanted to ask you first, how long have you been living at the co-op?
I moved in like January of 2020, so I think it must be I'm close to a year and a half now, I think.
Yeah. So, what would you say is like your favorite thing about the co-op? Now that you lived here like a year and a half.
Oh man. So I like how the whole system, the structure is set up. Everybody does their part, and just the like the science community there, like
Mhm.
it what's keep the whole thing going.
Mhm.
So I live in other places here in Westwood, and I'll say like I like the co-op by far more.
So, do you feel like as a grad student that it's convenient or not convenient, like living at the co-op, and maybe the aspect of how uh, you have to do a chore shift? Has that been like a pro or a con for you overall?
It's mostly been convenient. As for the short, I think it's like they ask very minimum for what you get in return, so it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm wondering, before you came to UCLA and the co-op, um, where did you do your undergrad, and what brought you to UCLA?
So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I did my undergrad there. So I only been living here in the state like for like almost 4 years now since I started my grad school here.
So you're doing a PhD in mechanical engineering. Was that also your undergrad major? And or what brought you to do mechanical engineering, or what specifically got you interested in doing your PhD at UCLA? Did you apply to other places, other type of degree, or yeah, what brought you specifically here?
Uh, well, my undergrad was in mechanical engineering too. Uh, as for what brought me here to UCLA, during my undergrad, I did like several internships. One of them was like here at UCLA. As for grad school, so like I did apply for the grad school, but UCLA was the only one that gave me the approval, so and gave me the funding too.
Hmm.
So you go with the green light, right?
Of course, makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, so what is your research about? What kind of research group are you a part of? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm part of the Christopher Lynch. Well, for started being co-advised, I have like technically two bosses. So
Mhm.
one of them is Christopher Lynch. He used to be the chair of the mechanical engineering department like 3 years ago. And then my other boss is Professor Greg Carmen. So he's like the director of the TAMS Engineering Research Center. So what we do here in this group is like we technically build magnetic devices. We play with magnets all day. So there's like several applications that you can use magnet for. Like just to mention, give you a few example what we do here. We try to do antennas for biomedical devices. So like let's say like you have like a heart condition, they had to put like a pacer inside of your heart. God forbid if you get a heart attack or something, that device can send like an a signal that hey, this person is in critical states, and is constantly monitoring your health.
Mhm.
So it can always be transmitting information even before you are even aware of it. And then like and usually those antennas that they use for those type of devices, the pacemaker, are magnetics antenna. Another application, and this is the one that I'm more involved in, is like the cell sorting of devices. So it's like cell sorting, like in layman's term, I would say like think like this past year we've been doing a lot of quarantine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if one person gets sick, you have to isolate him from the rest of the healthy people so that the healthy people don't get sick. So cell sorting is kind of like doing quarantine, but at the cellular level. So if you see like one bad cancer cell, you isolate that bad cancer cell from the rest of the population.
Where does the magnetics part come into that?
So so like how people like currently right now, like in this industry in biotechnology and the
Mhm.
biofield, does the cell sorting, they just like now this flying a little bit out of my my technical skill, but from what I understand so far, I just built the device. I don't like using actual application, right? So the cells, like they tend like somehow like react with some antibody. Like it's like a surface reaction. The antibody bonds themselves to the
Mhm.
cells, but then those antibodies you can use them to be tagged to respond to be tagged to some magnetic particles.
Mhm.
Through that kind of like chain reaction, you
Mhm.
can like sort of like control cell through using magnets. So if you put like a magnetic field near that cell that is tagged with one of those magnetic particles, it will capture the cells. By moving the magnetic field around, you
Mhm.
can control the position and the state of that cells. So right now, like how people do cell sorting, like in the industry, it's like they take like a large sample, like when you go like to the laboratory to get like a blood sample or something like that, right? And they mix that sample of blood like with the antibody and the magnetic particle solution, and they put that like in a large electromagnet to kind of like isolate the good from the bad cell, like, or
Mhm.
the bad cell, what we call here like the targeted cells. So what we're trying to do here at the in our group is like kind of take the same idea using magnetic field to control like the isolation of cells, but
Mhm.
instead of just using like one very large magnet that kind of like addresses all cells at the
Mhm.
same time, we're using like microscopic like cells that are, I mean, magnets that are like in the tens of micron size to
Mhm.
control like each of those magnetic particle individually.
I see. I see. Interesting. So you say that this cell sorting can segregate cells, right?
Yes,
Like health. So did I get it right that you're talking about healthy versus unhealthy cells?
exactly.
Okay. Um, Interesting. And you said that it's, did I get it right that it's for like cancer applications, or it can
Yeah,
be
that's
like
one.
other types of like identifying other kinds of healthy versus unhealthy cells?
Yeah, like so for example, cancer is one. So if you have like one cancer cell, like
Mhm.
eventually that cancer cell, like going back to the example
Mhm.
of the quarantine and the COVID, right? Like
Mhm.
if you had someone who has COVID and you have them near somebody who is healthy, the healthy person is gonna get sick eventually, right?
Mhm.
The same thing happened with cell when it has like other good cells around it. That contaminated cell is gonna start uh, damaging the other cell near it, and that cancerous cell is start expanding throughout throughout the blood or the
Right.
organ in this case. So and that's how like people go to hospital and they get like MRI or some other type of scan, and they can see like where in the body they might be developing like a tumor or some cancer. So the idea is like we can like isolate like what one of those, not one of those, but like anywhere where you can have like potential cancer, so isolate them So this type of cell sorting technology will be like for personalized therapeutics.
Yeah, interesting. So I want to just end by asking you, where do you see yourself going after grad school? And yeah, where do you see yourself ending up after doing something related to research in academia or going into industry?
Well, for starter, I'm sure it's not gonna be academia. I don't like grading or exam or any of that stuff. I do like the research part though,
Mhm.
and either I will go for private industry. Like I'm looking maybe my first couple of year in industry do like something close to research and development, since my
Mhm.
technical skill will still be fresh.
Yeah.
Or like going to a national lab. So national lab is somewhere in between like what will be like being in academia and being industry,
Mhm.
somewhere halfway in between.
Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, anywhere that, well, not anywhere, but a job that at least shows me like a above 1K is a salary. I also want to make some money out of it, right?
So actually related to that, I want to ask you something I've been wondering about, some of these uh, jobs at national laboratories. I don't know if you uh, know the answer, but um, so working for one of these national labs as, let's say, a staff scientist, um, how so you want to attract talent, right? But there are government jobs, and I know um, in general, like government jobs kind of pay a little bit less than industry jobs. So I'm wondering, is that also the case when it comes to national labs, that like the pay is a little lower than what you might have in industry?
Yeah, like for example, industry you can get like 150K. It also depends on the company and the location
Hmm.
where you're at. But companies like, like you have this thing to do, this project, you have to get it done by, I want you to do exactly this. You don't get a second voice on this. Just do this and get it ready by Friday by the end of the week.
Hmm.
In a national lab, you might not get the 150K. You might get, let's say, like 100K.
Hmm.
You get, but you get a lot more freedom. Like
Hmm.
you can write your own proposal, what you want to work in, what you think is interesting, and as long as you can get funding or support
Hmm.
for it, it's a go. So it's kind
Interesting.
of, yeah, you have to trade off like your salary for how much like you want to like um, um, uh, how flexible you can be in terms of like what the company demand from you,
Hmm. Yeah,
or if
makes
you want a
total
little bit
sense.
more freedom and but you don't get compensated as much. Yeah, so I
Interesting.
know a couple of people who had worked like, for example, like Tesla or SpaceX, and they get pretty good salary there, but at the end of the day they have to do like everything that they get told to. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a job, so at the end of the day you do whatever your boss
Hmm.
tell you, but
Interesting.
it's not
Well,
like you can initiate your own projects there, so it's different.
right, right. It's at the demands of the client, or yeah, the
Yeah.
company's goals.
Yeah,
Anyway,
plus I think
this
government job also has more benefits too.
mhm.
There's that too.
So thank you very much for joining me and telling me a little bit about your research and your career goals. Um, and that'll be it for me. Thank you.
All right,
Right.
thanks for having
Bye.
me.